Hello everyone, welcome to Imprint IS. I'm Varun Kalar, and today we're going to look at the session 3 of how to prepare for interviews. And in this interview session, we'll talk about abstract questions, right? Okay. So first question is, what are abstract questions and why are we talking about them, right? That's the main thing, right? Why are we, the why does UPSC or even any other college or any place ask about abstract questions? So that's the first question you would ask yourself, right? So the reason is that what are the first question is, what are abstract questions? So let's a question I would be, if you're made DC of your district, what steps would you take? If you made secretary of a department, what changes would you bring? If there's issues of land grabbing of by powerful politicians of the state, and you post that administrator, what would you do? Now, the reality is that even after 40 years of experience, the administrator, the IS officer, or the UPSC member doesn't have any answer to this. So, why are they asking this question? The reason is what they're looking for is a quality called critical assimilation of thoughts. So this is what they're looking for, right? And this is the reason they're asking you abstract big questions. The idea is they want to judge your character. So the idea is they want to judge your character, right? So how do I they so basically role playing is seen to be very important psychologically, and as psychological evidence that a person, if he's put into a role, how creative or how intuitive he is, pretty much decides how good he will be in the job, right? That's a empirical study done by various psychologists, and they think it's true. Okay, so the idea is that whether you're able to critically assimilate all the thoughts. So what does that mean? So somebody asked me, sorry. So I say, when during our time, when we were preparing, we used to read something called the India Yearbook, right? And it was like this huge book, and the idea was that it was seen to be the most boring book possible. So one of my juniors, he asked me, so how did you read this book? So I said that I used to assume that I'm the secretary of that department. As you assume, the health and family welfare, right, department is mine, and therefore I would remember all the schemes, because if the minister asked me, obviously he is a duffer, right? He doesn't know anything. Obviously ministers are not duffers, but still the idea is that यार उसको उस अनपढ़ गवार मिनिस्टर को क्या आता होगा? तो तुम सेक्रेटरी हो, तुम्हें बात सब कुछ याद होना चाहिए, तो तुम्हें सब कुछ पता होना चाहिए, तो तुम अगर अवेयर हो, एजुकेटेड हो, तो then you can actually run a good campaign and then obviously run a good ministry. That's the basic idea, right? As a secretary. Now, what are the different types of abstract based questions? So first is the quote based. So first is a quote based question. So the first recent interviews, even, and this is from 2019 interviews, right? This is not the old interview. This is from 2019. So there's a quote given: "History is written by winners. What is your advice to the losers?" Now, how do you answer a question like this? Then the only thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. Can you comment about the statement in the present context, whether it is relevant? Or if let's say, then some abstract question can even be from your, let's say if you're from the Indian Audit Account Service, or you're an auditor in some government department. So this kind of questions as auditor is as a watchdog, not a bloodhound. Meaning, and in which case it was used, which judge used it. So questions like this. Now, how to solve this problem? So what our suggestion is, obviously you can have your own thoughts about this. We say that always use a quote to answer a quote. So if the question is, history is written by the winners, what's your advice to the losers? So history repeats itself, hence don't lose. Now thing is that this is a tongue-in-cheek answer that can go very negatively, so bound to get a rebuttal. So talk about an essay, UPSC essay topic in 2019, that the courage to improve and the capacity to improve, right, are two keys to success. So I would like to advise the losers to learn from their mistakes and improve, right? And obviously remember, somebody in personal life, I felt that I lost hundreds of games of chess before I started winning. So that's the basic idea. Now, that kind of tells you what kind of personality you have. Remember, abstract questions kind of give us insight how you are as a human being, right? How positive and negative you are. Therefore, abstract questions are very important. Now, this question, which is very interesting. So, random question based on your name. So there's there's a student whose name was Mithun. So the panelists asked him, "Have you heard of a cattle in the northeast named Mithun?" Imagine I'm a Jallikattu activist and you're Mithun the cattle. Make a convincing argument against the sport. So obviously, how do you say, okay, how can I imagine myself to be a cattle? I'm a human being. Jallikattu, I really don't know too much about it. What do I do? So the idea is, remember you studied ethics, so use a ethics framework for this. Recognize the stakeholders. So number one, who's the stakeholder? Jallikattu activists. That's one. Then the Mithun, the cattle. That's two. Then the people who are organizing it, maybe three. Then the people who watch it, number four, and the society at large, that is number five. And talk in terms of utilitarian approach, rights-based approach, procedural freeness, whether it promotes virtues, like okay, utilitarian angle. So I'm a Jallikattu actress. So many people come to see it. It's a cultural right. Obviously, good thing. But the problem is the rights of the the cattle, the Mithun were being violated. There was no procedural, fairness. He was never asked whether he wants to participate in such a sport. He's, if he gets angry, then that's why so many people are trying to grab on my head, right? So on. So, obviously, procedurally, it's not fair to the Mithun. At the same time, his rights are being violated, right? He should have been asked, right, whether he wants to do it or not. Further, the next thing is the virtue promotion. What kind of virtues are promoted through Jallikattu? So, obviously, physical fitness, right, bravery, etc., are promoted. But at the same time, violence is also promoted, and that is also a problem. So, obviously, on the whole, the Mithun can argue that definitely there are cases against procedural fairness and rights, definitely against the sport. So go like that. You might be thinking, sir, like you're crazy in some ways. You're able to answer for a Mithunas also. Anyhow, then conversation-based abstract questions. So now this is a type of a leading type of a question. So check this out. Examine the situation. Your neighbor continuously try to abuse you and you will try to harm you. Will you allow your children to play with him? Now, this type of abstract question is where the chairman wants you to commit and then ask the real question. So first they will, ask you this and you say, obviously, I'll not allow, and then say whether India should play cricket and other sports with Pakistan, right? So again, the problem becomes that, you should not commit too early. So don't commit too early, right, in the interview. That's the basic idea. Okay, right. So this is something that you should be very, very careful with. So even if the neighbor is abusing me and is trying to harm me, my children, the question is whether he harms my children. What relationship does he have with my children? Right? Is there any benefit out of it? So obviously, India can play sports with Pakistan because it allows Indians to really, really perform really well. Right? It motivates them the most. So obviously. Case by case. Remember, the decision making in a bureaucracy, in diplomacy, is always case by case. And then a different base example of an abstract question. So, question like this: Chairman starts and he says, "What have you been doing since 2015?" I said, "Where have you been living?" So, I've been preparing for UPSC and I've been living in Patel Nagar or Rajendra Nagar or let's say any place in Delhi. Now, you lived there for a long time. What are the issues? So, you mentioned that the rent is very high. Now, the problem is, don't try to answer like this, okay, in an interview. Try to think like not just a person who lives there, but as a future bureaucrat. So obviously, with the pressure on infrastructure, transport infra, bylaws are flouted by coaching industry. They run commercial operations, residential lanes, so on. You talk about that. Then he asks you the next question: if you post SDM in an area, how would you solve the problem? Okay, then you say that first attempt would be decongesting by spreading out the institutes a bit. Second, it's increasing. We realize urban areas should actually see the coexistence of residential commercial building so as to reduce spend time, pollution, so on. So basically, the problem is with these answers is that they are not well thought of. So you're on the go. You should be ready for a question like this. Okay, so your local area, you should be very clear. So first problem is this, second problem is this, first. So let's say first problem is water. I would say, the water is not 24/7 in this area. Electricity supply is also weak. There is a problem of e-teasing. There's problem of people traveling at night. So a lot of people come late. There's a parking issue as well. So you talk like that. And then if you post a SDM, what would you do? So I would try to construct underground parking. I would create a women's safety environment. I would create an environment for women's safety. Now, how would you do it? Obviously, you can go about that. But the idea is that, be structured, right? That's the basic idea. Now, obviously, there are straight up position-based abstract questions. If you're DM, how would you use your knowledge of BCom in improving the school? So the idea behind this is they look for initiative and something personal and unique. Okay, so how does that occur? So let's say your knowledge of BCom. So talk about that you would encourage artificial innovation clusters in your district. Okay, so because BCom, right, commerce, you encourage commerce. That is, if you are DM in a right prone area, what would you do? So let's say you like to meditate. So you talk about the fact that you like to encourage meditation camps in your district, or you would like to play classical music in various parts, right? You install speakers and you play classical music, right, on the roads. If you're deep in a flood prone area, so obviously you should be very, very aware of the standard operating procedure. And at the same time, you talk about the first steps in a flood would be rescuing people and also creating basic amenities like water for the people. Then obviously standard questions can also be, how would you tackle corruption and lower bureaucracy? Now obviously remember this, nobody's been able to tackle it, so you just have to give an answer, right? But don't expect it to be the best answer. Talk about something which you think can be done. Okay. In the same way, like if your district head, what would be priority areas for women in rural areas? What immediately comes to your mind? So be very quick. So what rural area, what female? So obviously, the collection of water is a big issue. So females collection of water, and obviously firewood. Okay, so that's one first problem, right? They face. Then obviously education and political empowerment. Okay, so you talk about that. So obviously, so I will say, collection of water and firewood is one thing. So I like to make a lot of ponds using the NREGA funds, right? Then I would like to focus on their education. I would promote adult education among women because we feel that has a direct relationship with health, right? And I would try to create randomized controlled trials of Estradaflo, right? Giving Atta of Dal along with vaccinations, etc. Then straight up position-based abstract questions. If you made tomorrow SDM in a district, now here this is a question that you should be very well prepared for. Okay, I can forgive other questions like the Mithun question. I really don't expect you to give a wonderful answer to me, right? But if I made SDM in a district, what reforms will make? You should be ready for this. Make simple examples from your district where it can become a personal answer. Like even if you talk about starting doing something very simple as making a new hand pump, okay, that's good enough. But give it something which you've seen in your real life, something a real problem, something very close to your heart should come out here. The marks are of that, right? Remember, they're looking at your character and there's no point in hiding it, right? Okay, if you really care about the country, say it. Okay, that's what I would say. Okay, right. Thank you so much for listening. Call 6280-187-919 in case you have any questions. Right, if you're taking an interview, I would love to help you out. You can email your DAF at imprintknowledgesolution@gmail.com. You can like our channel, subscribe it, and go through our website as well. Right. Thank you so much for listening.